18 years of silence. Then a single chime changed my life. 10 minutes ago, I was completely stuck. My college exam results were perfectly average. I had to choose. Do I become a trainer, or do I take over my late parents' breeding house? It was a grueling dilemma. Not anymore. My long-awaited system finally booted up. It had been locked behind a minor anti-addiction protocol. The second I turned 18, the lock vanished. It bound to me as the Pokémon happiness system. The rules were simple. Make Pokémon happy, earn rewards. It immediately flooded my brain with gifts. I received the God-level power of Viridian. I gained God-level breeder knowledge. The eye of exploration unlocked in my vision. Finally, the true newbie constitution reshaped my body. I was basically invincible now. The true newbie constitution drops incoming move damage by 99%. I can share my boundless stamina with my Pokémon. My Viridian power lets me heal and soothe them instantly. The eye of exploration turns the world into readable data. After 18 years of waiting, my hesitation vanished. I chose to be a breeder. I would reopen my parents' nursery right here in Wutong Town. I stepped out of my small wooden house. My father's scyther had carved the nursery sign above the door years ago. My parents vanished in the wilderness when I was 8. I dodged the orphanage by selling leftover eggs to the League. That money kept me alive. Now I had everything I needed to thrive. My new eyes zoomed in on the distant rice paddies. I could count the scales on a sand shrew hundreds of meters away. The sand shrew was plowing a field. My neighbor, Grandpa Chin, walked beside it. I jogged over to say hello. He wiped mud from his face and smiled. He told me they were planting spicy berries for the sand shrew. I asked to borrow the little ground type. I needed help clearing the overgrown land behind my house. I wanted to plant my own berries. Grandpa Chin asked if I was skipping university. I nodded. I didn't have a starter Pokémon anyway. Plus, I already held my intermediate breeder certificate. He warmly agreed to my plan. He told me to dream big and offered Sandshrews help any time. I thanked him. I promised Sandshrew a massive bowl of spicy noodles after the work was done. The little creature grinned wildly. Suddenly, a system alert rang in my head. Sandshrew's happiness had jumped to 60%. Rewards poured into my inventory. I got 5 bags of golden fertilizer for 10-fold crop growth. I received a rare candy. I even got specialized soil to harden ground-type Pokémon. I stared at the happy Sandshrew in shock. Making them happy was incredibly easy. The rewards were completely absurd. I left them to their work and walked down to the river. I blew a sharp, familiar whistle. A brownish-gray Phoebus broke the surface. Its scales were chipped and tattered. I tossed a water-type energy cube into the stream. Phoebus swallowed it in one gulp. Another chime echoed. Its happiness hit 40%. The system handed me 10 more bags of golden fertilizer. Another rare candy. A lifeberry. I reached down and patted its head. I asked if it wanted to come home with me. I had rescued this little fish from a mud puddle years ago. School forced me to release it back into the river. Yet it always waited for me. It swam beside me whenever I walked the banks. Now I wanted it to be my first companion. Phoebus froze. It stared at me in total shock. My Viridian power let me feel its disbelief. I smiled and pulled an empty Pokeball from my belt. My eye of exploration scanned the fish. Female. Adaptability ability. Green aptitude. 85 intimacy. Then, its happiness rocketed to 95%. Jackpot! The system unleashed a massive reward. I got an aptitude enhancement recipe. 10 perfect grade beautiful scales. 10 magical candies. Pure joy radiated from the fish's dull eyes. I tapped the Pokeball against its head. Red light pulsed. The capture clicked. I checked the empty riverbank, struck a peace sign, and cheered. My first catch was complete. I stashed the ball and walked along the old irrigation canal. My parents dug it years ago to water our plantation. It was dry but structurally sound. It only needed a little clearing. I headed back toward the overgrown fields for some fresh peaches. My mind drifted over this world's history. Arceus created Mew. Professor Bruce Pye made the first Pokeball in 1897. The leagues formed in 1924. I grew up watching legends like Leon and Cynthia on TV. I used to dream of being a Pokemon master. Now being a breeder felt right. I reached the old plantation behind my house. It was the size of a football field. Weeds choked the dirt. A few sturdy peach and orange trees still stood. I let out a heavy sigh at the mess. Suddenly, a bluish-green shadow flashed right past my face. The bluish-green shadow flashed past so quickly that most would have missed it. But my eye of exploration caught its details instantly. It was a female Snivy with the rare Contrary ability, boasting impressive red-tier aptitude and a solid array of moves, including Leaf Blade and Grass Whistle. In my data site, Pokemon capabilities fall into tiers ranging from white, green, blue, and purple to red and gold. Higher tiers signify immense innate potential, though even a white-tier Pokemon can reach the top given proper nurturing or a powerful bond. Seeing a red-tier Snivy sneaking around my peach trees left me thoroughly pleasantly surprised. Rather than trying to flush it out from behind the tree, I used the power of Viridian to project my voice directly to its mind, calling it out for sneaking my peaches. Knowing Snivy to be a proud and selective species, I knew a direct approach would work best. Realizing the property was inhabited, the grass snake emerged with an embarrassed blush, its smooth, jade-like belly and elegant leaf details shimmering in the sun. Fidgeting nervously, it asked in a small voice if the peach tree belonged to me. I gestured toward the scattered peach pits on the ground, pointing out that stealing wasn't a great habit, which made the poor creature squirm even more. It offered to go gather wild peaches to make up for it, but I countered that wild fruit couldn't match my family's carefully cultivated trees. Instead of demanding payment, I proposed a deal. Since I needed to restore the overgrown plantation, it could stay and help clear out the weeds in exchange for full room and board. To demonstrate, I pulled out a single weed and placed it by the path. Relieved to clear its conscience, the Snivy agreed immediately. Having a capable helper like this was a huge relief, as clearing a football field-sized plantation by myself would have taken days. Furthermore, a permanent grass-type companion would eventually be crucial for protecting future crops from wild pests like Ratata or Pidgey. Leaving Snivy to its task, I headed inside to prepare its meals. Using my family's old berry blender and equipment, I processed a batch of peach berries, crushing, heating, and solidifying them into energy cubes. Thanks to my god-level breeder skills, the process took less than an hour, producing pinkish-white cubes with a grade B rating that offered a temporary poison-resistance culinary effect. Returning to the field, I found Snivy working tirelessly, having already cleared half of the front section. I called it over and offered the fresh energy cubes. Intrigued by the rich peach aroma, it took a small bite after getting my nod. Its eyes instantly went wide with sheer delight at the incredible flavor, chewing rapidly as a warm, refreshing sensation washed over its body. The moment Snivy tasted the energy cube, its happiness level climbed from 10 to 30%, prompting the system to reward me with 10 bags of golden fertilizer, 1 rare candy, and a special scale berry to boost special attack. Watching its delight, I asked if it enjoyed the treat, knowing the answer already. Its bright eyes sparkled as it nodded rapidly, though it quickly slowed its movements and closed its eyes to appear reserved. I chuckled at its cute attempt to act aloof, assuring the proud little creature that I would continue providing these energy cubes as long as it kept helping me weed. Upon hearing this, Snivy looked from the ground to the already cleared section, and its movements suddenly slowed down. Realizing that finishing the job would mean no more energy cubes, it intentionally slowed its eating pace, taking a full half hour to finish before returning to work at a leisurely crawl. Seeing this, I suggested using its vine whip to pull the weeds, framing it as a way to train its precision and control. Delighted by this clever excuse to slow down its progress, Snivy eagerly extended its vines to work. I joined in to help clear a plot for essential medicinal herbs and berry crops, clearing half of the area within 10 minutes. Anxious that I was finishing too quickly, Snivy wrapped a vine around my pant leg, insisting in its fragmented way that this was its job alone to make up for the eaten peaches. Squatting to eye level, I tried to pat its head, but it neatly dodged my hand. Laughing it off, I left Snivy to its slow pace and moved to clean out the dried, cracked reservoir, clearing away the withered weeds and branches so I could fill it with stream water for Phoebus. Once the reservoir was cleared, I invited Snivy to come along as I headed out to clear the irrigation canal. Glad for a break from the tedious work, it tied up the gathered debris with its vines and followed me onto the bluestone path. Basking comfortably in the warm midday sun, Snivy accepted another energy cube in exchange for clearing branches and stones from the water channel. Within half an hour, the canal was clean, allowing me to remove the wooden barricade at the river and send cool, fresh water flowing down into our plantation. Handing Snivy another reward, I watched it eat with pure bliss, completely unaware that its growing addiction to my cooking was playing right into my plan to keep it forever. When afternoon came, I headed over to a small villa with Snivy on my left and Sandshrew on my right to greet Grandpa Chin. He asked with a smile if Snivy was my Pokémon, which made the little grass snake freeze with anxiety, terrified I might reveal it was just a stray helper. To save its pride, I chuckled and agreed that we needed a Pokémon to help manage our large plantation, amusing Grandpa Chin. On the way back, I bought some spicy berries in town, which made the hungry Sandshrew practically drool. A quick scan with my data site showed Sandshrew had a white tier aptitude with solid defensive stats, a good mood, and high intimacy toward me. Seeing it roll around on the road in anticipation, I promised to make it spicy noodles personally. Beside us, Snivy watched with an arrogant, dismissive look, thoroughly unimpressed by the idea of simple noodles compared to high-grade energy cubes. Back at the nursery around noon, I headed straight into the kitchen to prepare lunch. Having lived independently for years, I was already a skilled cook, but combined with my new master-level knowledge, the results were on another level. I boiled egg noodles in a flavorful broth seasoned with lard, fried up fluffy eggs in hot rapeseed oil, and stir-fried the chopped spicy berries into a rich, sweet, and fiery tomato sauce before pouring it over the bowls. The Eye of Exploration confirmed it as a B-grade dish capable of boosting a Pokémon's special attack by 10% for an hour. Looking down, I realized both Sandshrew and Snivy were staring up at me with open mouths and eager eyes. Surprised by Snivy's sudden change of heart, I smiled and divided the food into 3 bowls. Sandshrew dug in without hesitation, grabbing the hot, spicy noodles with its paws and burying its face in the bowl. Its sheer delight pushed its happiness level to 85%, rewarding me with 10 bags of golden fertilizer, a rare candy, and specialized sand. Snivy carefully used its vine whip to pick up a pair of chopsticks, putting its newly practiced vine control to good use. The moment it slurped down a mouthful of noodles, its eyes widened in shock, and its happiness soared to 35%, earning me another 8 bags of golden fertilizer and a rare candy. Astonished by their intense reactions, I tried to bite myself, sweating as I devoured every last drop of the incredible soup within 3 minutes. My master-level instincts had subtly perfected the cooking technique to an extraordinary degree. After lunch, I pulled a bag of golden fertilizer from my storage space, confident that using high-tech storage items around the Pokémon wouldn't raise suspicion. The system-granted fertilizer promised to boost ordinary plant growth 10 times over, and with dozens of bags and rare candies already accumulated, I had plenty to spare. Walking out to the plantation with the 2 Pokémon, I evenly spread the fertilizer across a 10 by 10 meter plot of land. Excited by the feast it had just enjoyed, Sandshrew eagerly agreed to do its best. I handed it the task of plowing the enriched soil, ready to prepare our very first crop. By dusk, Sandshrew had plowed 2 entire plots, allowing me to plant an assortment of medicinal herbs for healing potion ingredients alongside chili peppers, millet peppers, and turnips from the town's seed shop. On my way back from town, I picked up a fish tank to house my Phoebas. To express my gratitude to Sandshrew for its hard work, I whipped up a fresh batch of spicy tofu noodles that evening. The little pangolin devoured every bite with pure delight, its eager eyes darting toward the remaining undeveloped land as if silently begging me to call on it for future farm work. As Sandshrew prepared to head home, I pulled a rare candy from my collection and handed it over as an extra reward. Puzzled by the treat, the simple-minded Pokémon sniffed it before gulping it down in one bite. Instant energy surged through its body, instantly washing away its fatigue. Through my Eye of Exploration, I watched its energy level jump from level 11 to level 13, granting it a permanent 2-level boost. After bowing to me twice in appreciation, the happy ground type waddled off into the evening. Nearby, Snivy let out a mournful little sigh. Having tasted my cooking throughout the day, it clearly realized that any food originating from my kitchen was an absolute masterpiece. I crouched down in front of the grass type with a warm smile, praising it for pulling weeds across 2 full fields. Feeling a wave of sudden shy affection, Snivy stepped closer and gently lowered its head, silently inviting me to pet it. I chuckled, handed over a rare candy, and placed my hand on its head. Its skin felt wonderfully smooth, cool, and soft to the touch like delicate jelly. Having finally won its trust enough to pet it, I decided it was time to make things official. I pulled out a Pokeball, set it on the ground before Snivy, and earnestly asked if it wanted to become my Pokémon. Caught completely off guard with the rare candy still in its mouth, Snivy froze on the spot. It turned its head away with a flushed face, feeling that one day together was a bit too sudden. I reassured it that true fate knows no timeline, reaffirming my sincere desire to journey together. Swallowing the candy, Snivy turned back, tapped its vine against the button with a reluctant huff, and allowed itself to be drawn inside. After a few brief red flashes, the capture was complete. Shaking my head at my proud tsundere little companion, I immediately released it back into the open. The updated data displayed its red tier potential, its current level range jumping up to 14 through 19, and its affection and happiness both settled firmly at 60%. Relieved to see that our dynamic hadn't changed at all, Snivy followed me in small steps as I led the way back to the cleared reservoir. The water in the reservoir had settled into a crystal-clear pond over the course of the afternoon. When I released Phoebus into the cool water, even its usually dull eyes sparked with genuine joy at seeing me again. I gently lifted the fish from the water to show Snivy, who inspected its scarred, uneven scales with deep curiosity. Knowing the system had rewarded me with top-tier, perfect-grade, beautiful scales, I intended to thoroughly clean and condition Phoebus before sparking its evolution to ensure the highest possible quality. I transferred Phoebus into the water-filled fish tank from my storage space and brought both Pokémon back inside the house. I placed Phoebus's tank on the dining table and guided Snivy toward a spacious wooden Pokémon house nearby. My mother had originally built the structure for my father's Scyther years ago, making it a bit large for a small snake, but thoroughly cleaned and ready for use. When Snivy looked up at the oversized shelter in confusion, I jokingly claimed I had selected a larger home to accommodate its future evolution into superior. It rolled its eyes at my cheeky lie, fully aware the house was vintage, yet it gladly slithered inside to explore the cozy, clean interior. Its true feelings instantly flashed in my mind as a system notification confirmed its happiness had jumped to 75%, awarding me 8 bags of golden fertilizer, 3 rare candies, and a grassy terrain skill move disc. Snivy had officially accepted this place as home. Early the next morning, the first rays of sunlight streamed into my wooden house. I got up early to check on the plantation, eager to see how the seeds planted the previous day were faring. In just one single night, several seeds had already sprouted, sending green shoots a few centimeters into the soil. I nodded in deep satisfaction at the extraordinary effectiveness of the golden fertilizer provided by the system. While crops in this Pokémon-inhabited world generally grew faster than normal, usually 2 or 3 times faster under ideal conditions, this rapid overnight progress was exceptionally impressive. After watering the sprouts, I returned inside to find both of my Pokémon awake. Snivy stood gracefully by the window to greet the morning sun, while Phoebus floated in her tank, staring blankly at me like a faithful waiting stone. I scooped the remaining peachberry energy cubes into a bowl and called Snivy over for breakfast. Accepting its new role as my companion, it elegantly carried the bowl to the table and began to eat. I then crushed an energy cube and dropped it into Phoebus's tank. Phoebus's body still bore rough pitted scales, which could hinder its beauty rating upon evolution if left untreated. Although applying the perfect grade beautiful scales would fix most flaws, my breeder instincts told me that smoothing out its skin beforehand would yield a far superior result. With proper feeding and frequent water changes, I had estimated it would take half a month to polish its scales. However, as Phoebus happily devoured the treat, a system notification popped up to announce that its happiness had jumped to 75%, rewarding me with 10 bags of golden fertilizer, a rare candy, and a brand new energy cube recipe specifically tailored for it. Realizing its rapidly rising happiness might accelerate its physical refinement, I smiled at the oblivious fish, anticipating that its transformation from an ugly duckling into a swan was much closer than expected. I turned my attention to the day's tasks, which included retrieving my official breeder certificate, purchasing essential supplies for the nursery, and registering both Snivy and Phoebus under my breeding house. Alliance law mandated that newly caught Pokémon be registered within 7 days. While novice trainers were strictly limited to holding a single Pokémon until they raised their rank, owning a registered breeding center lifted those restrictions, allowing me to register multiple companions right away. As I prepared to put the 2 Pokémon into their Pokéballs, a loud voice called out from the path, addressing me warmly. Turning around, I saw Chinshu, a pretty young woman in a white shirt and sweatpants, running toward me with her hair tied in a short ponytail. She was Grandpa Chin's granddaughter, a high school sophomore returning home for summer break. Running alongside her was a thoroughly exhausted, listless Squirtle, panting heavily from their morning jog. I chuckled at the sight of the sweating Squirtle, offering a friendly greeting to Chinshu. Starter Pokémon were quite expensive, usually reserved for well-off families, but her parents worked as a gym trainer and a Pokémon hospital nurse, allowing them to afford one for her. Seeing her proud expression, I complimented Squirtle's healthy skin and strong build, asking if she had finally passed the beginner trainer exam. Becoming a formal trainer required passing a written theory test after 9 years of compulsory education. I had cleared it easily during my first year of high school, but Chinshu had failed her first attempt due to her overly athletic and scatterbrained nature. Blushing shyly, she admitted she had finally passed on her latest try. She then asked with concern why I wasn't pursuing the trainer path despite my excellent academic record. As I invited her inside, I explained that my strong background in Pokémon studies made me better suited for becoming a breeder, as I had little interest in traveling far from home. Chinshu nodded thoughtfully, but her attention was immediately stolen by Snivy finishing its breakfast on the table. Her eyes lit up with excitement as she recognized the grass type, instantly challenging me to a trainer battle. Staring at her in disbelief, I realized she hadn't listened to my explanation at all. Finished with its meal, Snivy glanced at the panting Squirtle, then turned to me with a questioning look, silently asking if we were going to fight. My data site revealed that Chinshu's female Squirtle possessed blue tier potential and torrent, but its strength was only around level 5 to 8. Worse, its affection was low, and its happiness sat at -15, filled with pure resentment over being forced out for an early morning run. Staring at its internal monologue complaining about its trainer, I found the situation thoroughly amusing. Chinshu puffed out her chest, boldly asserting that while water was weak to grass, her superior command would surely lead her Squirtle to a draw against my Snivy. I agreed to the match, deciding it was best to give her a reality check on the massive gap created by a 10-level difference in type advantage. We stepped outside onto the bluestone path, an ideal spot since beginner moves wouldn't damage the stone. Along the way, Chinshu babbled on about preparing for the upcoming baby cup, while Squirtle stared longingly at Snivy, wondering where it found such a competent trainer and if it could trade up. Snivy simply rolled its eyes at the goofy turtle, walking beside me with an aloof smile that clearly showed it appreciated my calm, sensible nature far more. Standing at opposite ends of the path, we prepared for battle. Upon Chinshu's energetic signal, Squirtle charged forward with tackle, using its smooth, shiny head as a battering ram. It moved with impressive speed from its morning runs, but bizarrely kept its head tucked down, blinding itself to its target. I flicked my finger and advised Snivy to go easy on them. Snivy shrugged indifferently, easily stepping to the side as Squirtle zoomed past without realizing it had missed. Snivy extended its vines to trip the turtle, causing Squirtle's head to hit the bluestone with a loud, sickening crack. Watching it bounce off the stone, Snivy touched its own forehead in disbelief at the pair's shared clumsiness. Chinshu shouted for Squirtle to hang in there, and the groggy turtle wobbled to its feet, searching blindly for its opponent. Feeling a bit embarrassed for them, I quietly pointed behind it, prompting Chinshu to yell out a warning. Before Squirtle could react, Snivy's vine whip tightly bound its body, lifted it into the air, and tossed it onto the ground. Squirtle lay there for a long moment, completely bewildered by how fast the grass type had moved. Chinshu rushed to her Pokemon's side in panic. While Squirtle was far from knocked out, it quickly feigned complete exhaustion, crying out weakly to avoid any more fighting. The oblivious Chinshu bought the act entirely, looking up at Snivy with genuine admiration. I walked over with my Snivy, chuckling inwardly as I realized Squirtle was simply faking its weakness to escape further effort. When Chinshu proudly asked how her performance was, I offered a subtle nod, suggesting with a grin that Squirtle might have better luck next time if it kept its eyes up while charging. Watching Chinshu leave with renewed confidence, I couldn't help but shake my head. I had merely reminded her to make sure Squirtle kept its eyes open during a tackle, yet she somehow convinced herself that a lack of head-on collision skill was the sole reason for her loss. Snivy let out a quiet sigh beside me, equally bewildered by her logic. Pushing the funny thought aside, I pulled out a Pokeball and asked if Snivy wanted to rest inside for our trip to the city center. The grass snake looked at the small sphere with utter disdain, making it clear that it despised cramped spaces. I explained that Alliance transportation laws strictly barred large uncontained Pokémon and required trainers to maintain physical contact with their companions on public buses, offering to either carry it in my arms or let it perch on my shoulder. Snivy reluctantly agreed to be carried. After we picked up my official papers from the Pokémon League branch in Wutong City, I held the cool, smooth little snake in my arms as we walked along the bustling street. The friendly receptionist at the Alliance office had processed my paperwork quickly, praising my achievement as an intermediate trainer at such a young age, while issuing the formal registration certificate for my incubation center. With my official breeder credentials secured, I decided to head to the Want supermarket across the street to buy everyday bandages, healing supplies, and raw materials for crafting energy cubes. Crossing the street, I noticed a massive promotional banner hanging above the supermarket entrance. It announced that Want Supermarket and the Pokémon League were co-hosting the Baby Cup, a battle tournament specifically designed for new trainers during summer break, featuring free entry and a prominent illustration of a kissing Gardevoir. Reading the prize list, my eyes widened at the rewards. First place offered a starter Pokémon egg, an 88,000 RMB shopping card, and an exclusive egg riddle challenge at headquarters, while second and third places also offered 88,000 RMB shopping cards. The rules specified that only first-stage Pokémon below level 20 could enter, starting on July 15th. Although entering a battle tournament slightly diverged from my breeder path, the 88,000 RMB shopping card was simply too tempting to pass up. I looked down at Snivy and asked for its opinion, but when it shook its head in confusion at the sign, I intentionally misinterpreted its gesture as enthusiastic agreement and marched straight inside to register. The registration area inside the supermarket was crowded with young trainers who had just passed their beginner assessments. I cursed the supermarket's brilliant marketing strategy under my breath, recognizing how a small prize pool drove massive sales in Pokémon supplies, though I silently vowed to borrow the same promotional tactic for my own nursery in the future. A female employee approached us to conduct market research, complimenting Snivy's adorable appearance and causing the proud snake to blush in my arms. When she asked for my thoughts on the Baby Cup, I replied with a straight face that while the event was wonderful, raising the prize values would make me even happier when I won first place. Taken aback by my bold confidence, she asked if I was an elite trainer from a top academy. I gave her a bright smile, explaining that I was actually just a breeder taking on a part-time battle. Stunned into silence, she offered a polite chuckle and walked away, secretly doubting my odds against the supermarket owner's son, who was entering the tournament with a powerful Lapras. The registration process was straightforward, requiring only basic information and a deposit of 1,000 Alliance coins. This deposit served as an advance guarantee to ensure participants arrived on time and avoided empty brackets. Once the tournament concludes, the organizers refund the entire amount. By the time I finished signing up, it was nearly 10 in the morning, so I decided to pick up my essential supplies before heading back. Carrying Snivy in my arms, I walked over to the berry section and picked out the raw ingredients needed for crafting specialized energy cubes. I asked Snivy if there was anything else it wanted, but the little grass snake simply shook its head. Having spent its entire life observing humans from the edge of the forest, it had never seen a supermarket before, though it secretly noted that the small, rectangular handheld screens could be exchanged for all sorts of wonderful goods. Watching the displays, I briefly considered purchasing a rotom. For any gym or breeding center, a rotom is an invaluable assistant for recording data, forecasting weather, and monitoring soil moisture, all without taking up a trainer's active team slot. However, the thought vanished as quickly as it came when I remembered my finances. My parents had left me roughly 320,000 Alliance coins, and with a single rotom costing 250,000, I needed to keep a healthy emergency fund. Besides, the plantation was still small enough for me to manage on my own. On my way out, I spotted some pasture seeds and bought a batch, reasoning that planting managed pasture was far better than letting unused land become overgrown. A large dairy farm in a nearby village frequently purchased dry hay, meaning I could eventually cultivate my own feed and raise milk tank to produce fresh milk. A proper breeding center needed a diverse offering, though managing dozens of Pokémon under official league guidelines sounded almost as demanding as a full-time office job. After completing our shopping, I took Snivy out for a steak lunch, though the little snake casually remarked that it didn't taste nearly as good as my homemade noodles. I chuckled at its honesty, proud of my master-level culinary talents. Upon returning home, I immediately set to work making a fresh batch of energy cubes for Phoebus. In just over 10 minutes, I crafted a batch of grade C maintenance cubes using beauty fruit and blemish-removing herbs. The system's data site revealed that these cubes maximize the ingredients' properties, boosting charm by 15% for 1 hour. Curious about how charm manifested, I crushed the warm cube into the fish tank and watched Phoebus devour it with delight. Before my eyes, its rough scales smoothed out, transitioning from a dull gray to a delicate milky white, while its eyes became far more expressive. Surprised by the rapid improvement, I offered a cube to Snivy as well, which gave its coat a noticeably sleek and glossy sheen. Looking at Phoebus's rapidly improving skin, I estimated that it would only take 3 or 4 days for it to be ready for evolution. Once it evolved into melodic, its water-type moves would save me from having to manually irrigate the fields every day. Under the scorching summer heat, the newly fertilized crops required constant watering. Stepping out to the plantation, I found that last night's sprouts had already grown 10 centimeters tall, though their leaves looked slightly wilted in the heat. Snivy followed me outside and immediately began pulling weeds at a much faster pace, no longer hiding its true speed. I called it over, realizing I had forgotten to teach it the skill move disc I received earlier. I pulled out the light green disc and applied it directly to Snivy, instantly transferring the knowledge of grassy terrain into its mind. Subconsciously activating the new move, Snivy released a wave of vibrant green energy, instantly covering the 2 newly cleared plots with a lush layer of fresh grass. Seeing all its hard weeding work completely undone, the little snake's face immediately darkened. Fortunately, as soon as Snivy released its energy, the freshly sprouted grass disappeared, easing its initial panic. It quickly realized that its power could influence plants across the entire field. Closing its eyes, Snivy focused on assimilating the surrounding wildlife energy into its domain. Within seconds, the life force of every weed within 30 meters was absorbed, and with a single flick of its intent, the weeds were uprooted all at once. Snivy opened its eyes to find me watching with genuine astonishment. I praised its rapid mastery of grassy terrain, noting that it had naturally learned to assimilate external vegetation before I even suggested it. Though Snivy maintained an indifferent expression and raised its chin proudly, a system notification echoed in my mind, revealing its inner delight. I offered another round of praise before reviewing the rewards in my system interface. Accumulating these rewards helped me uncover 2 key mechanics of the system. First, triggering a reward required a single happiness gain of at least 10%. Second, making a Pokémon happy for the first time unlocked a unique, high-tier resource, such as Sandshrews' specialized sand, Phoebus's life berry, or Snivy's special scale berry. Larger single-instance happiness gains yielded even more valuable items, including skill move discs and attribute-enhancing cube recipes. Improving a Pokémon's baseline stats or aptitude is usually impossible without divine legendary intervention, but these recipes made it attainable through expensive, high-grade ingredients. The life berry boosted physical endurance, while the special scale berry enhanced special attack. Looking at my hard-working Snivy, I smiled, appreciating its obedient nature despite its proud demeanor. An energetic voice suddenly called out from the edge of the property, and the gate clicked open. It was Chinshu barging in with her usual breathless enthusiasm. I asked what brought her over, and her eyes lit up as she spotted Snivy seamlessly uprooting weeds across the field. Stunned by the display, she asked how a Snivy could clean a field so effortlessly. I teased her gently, asking if she had slept through her academy lessons on grassy terrain. Blushing furiously, she admitted she hadn't been paying attention in class. I laughed and asked her to get to the point. She explained that an annoying classmate had been constantly messaging her all summer. To make him leave her alone, she had challenged him to a battle, only for him to propose competing in Want Supermarket's baby cup. Fearing her Squirtle couldn't overcome his Bulbasaur due to type disadvantage, she begged me to let Snivy help train her turtle. I teased her for accepting such a childish feud, suspecting the boy simply had a crush on her, but her relentless pleading convinced me to consider it. This could serve as my nursery's very first professional training order, and maintaining a good relationship with her family made it worthwhile. My main concern was whether Snivy would agree to help the goofy, clumsy Squirtle. Just then, Snivy finished clearing the last patch of weeds and slithered back to my side. Chinshu gushed with praise at its efficiency, but Snivy remained indifferent until I crouched down to gently brush a small twig from its forehead, causing a soft smile to appear on its face. After praising its hard work, I explained Chinshu's request. Snivy immediately knit its brows in annoyance at the thought of dealing with a turtle that couldn't even keep its head up while charging. I patted its head reassuringly, promising to handle the strategy if it provided the physical training, privately realizing that Squirtle's water-type moves could solve my plantation's irrigation needs in the process. Early the next morning, I sat with Snivy beneath the shade of a peach tree, overseeing Squirtle's training in the plantation. Snivy extended its vine whip to lightly tap Squirtle's feet, forcing the turtle to constantly dodge while firing off water guns at various spots around the field. I called out instructions, reminding Squirtle to control its water speed so it wouldn't wash away the soil, and warning it that failing to master its primary attack move would leave it helpless in battles. Driven by curiosity after Chinshu promised her a great teacher, Squirtle had initially been eager to participate, but its mood quickly soured into intense resentment when it realized I was simply using its move to irrigate my fields. After Squirtle watered a large section of land, its cheeks were visibly deflated and its energy completely drained. Checking its status through my data site, I saw its friendship and pleasure levels had plunged due to its early morning labor. Deciding it had worked hard enough, I called a break and pulled out a fresh batch of stamina-restoring energy cubes made from yesterday's berries and spring water. These Grade C cubes rapidly replenished energy while permanently enhancing stamina and move learning efficiency over time, a rare benefit that money could rarely buy. I gently offered one to the exhausted turtle. Squirtle grumbled resentfully before taking a bite, but its eyes instantly lit up as a warm, refreshing sensation burst across its palate. Devouring the treat, its lifeless expression vanished, replaced by sheer joy. Seeing my temporary worker enjoy the food, I freely offered more until Squirtle lay sprawled on the ground, completely stuffed and satisfied. A system notification popped up to announce that its happiness had jumped from -20 to 30%, rewarding me with 20 bags of golden fertilizer, 3 rare candies, and a special clear water stream item to enhance water-type moves. Watching the turtle rest contentedly, I smiled at the familiar sight, which prompted Snivy to sigh in silent realization. Snivy had originally sought a high-caliber trainer to help it grow, only to realize it had been won over just as easily by my delicious energy cubes. Squirtle eventually sat up, looking at me with a complex mix of affection and confusion, utterly torn between hating the hard work and loving the food. Just then, Chinshu arrived at the plantation accompanied by her grandfather Sandshrew. Unlike the reluctant turtle, Sandshrew looked thrilled to be there, eager for another round of labor. Welcoming the enthusiastic worker, I promised to prepare a batch of spicy noodles later, sending Sandshrew straight to work plowing the remaining uncultivated soil. I mapped out plans for the rest of the land, deciding to dedicate half of it to pasture for future Miltank, while acknowledging that larger species like Tauros would eventually require a much bigger plot. I also resolved to plant several birch trees to raise caterpie, intending to harvest and sell their valuable silk. In this world, durable Pokémon silk clothing is essential protection against stray battle attacks, and caterpie fed on birch leaves produce thread with natural cooling properties. With every task lined up, I called Snivy and Chinshu over, putting everyone to work fertilizing the soil and sowing pasture seeds across the freshly plowed fields. 3 days later, as the sun began to set, I looked out over the lush, neatly arranged pasture and smiled with complete satisfaction. In just a day or two, the pasture would be ready for its first harvest. Squirtle was diligently spraying water onto the planted soil, moving from plot to plot until every last crop was thoroughly watered. Once the irrigation was complete, I called for it to stop, and the turtle came bounding over with its shell bouncing in a hilarious, energetic rhythm. I pulled out its favorite energy cube and handed it over as a reward. Checking its status through my data site, I noticed that Squirtle had reached level 9, with its intimacy and happiness levels climbing up to 60%. Over the past 3 days, I hadn't fed it a single rare candy, yet its natural level still progressed steadily toward its current threshold. This gave me a clearer understanding of my inspection system, revealing how a Pokemon's energy naturally caps off near the limit of its current growth stage before breaking through. I had also fed Snivy 2 rare candies over the same period, bringing its strength up to around level 18. Its internal energy intensity had grown significantly, yet it had not evolved into Servine, proving that real-world evolution depends on factors far more complex than simply hitting level 16. After Squirtle finished watering, Snivy activated its grassy terrain to accelerate the growth of all the surrounding crops. Thanks to the combined efforts of both Pokemon and the system's golden fertilizer, our first batch of vegetables was already approaching full maturity. The spicy berry plants had grown over 1 meter tall, their branches weighed down by dozens of dense fruits and fresh blossoms. The 30 jujube trees were thriving just as well, promising a harvest of dozens or even hundreds of kilograms per tree, while the eggplants and green beans looked exceptionally vibrant. I felt a surge of anticipation, eager to see if crops nurtured by high-grade fertilizer and specialized Pokemon care would yield even greater culinary and nutritional effects when cooked. When Squirtle finished its treat, I casually announced that it had completed the first phase of its duties and would no longer need to water the fields starting tomorrow. Hearing this, the turtle froze in mid-chew, looking at me with wide, tear-filled eyes as if it had just been fired from its dream job. Over the past few days, it had grown deeply attached to the work, delighting in how rapidly its skill proficiency and internal energy reserves expanded with every shift. I tapped its head with a laugh, reassuring it that Phase 2 was right around the corner, and its supply of energy cubes was fully secure. I handed Squirtle a rare candy, having deduced that spacing these candies 3 days apart allowed a Pokemon's body to digest the sudden energy boost most efficiently. Once a Pokemon reaches the elite tier, where energy density caps out, these candies naturally offer diminishing returns. But for a growing starter, the benefit was immense. Swallowing the candy, Squirtle felt a massive wave of energy surge through its body, its panic instantly evaporating. Satisfied, I sent it home for the evening, reminding it to return tomorrow. Squirtle happily trotted off with another energy cube tucked into its claws, overjoyed to retain its place on my team. Once Snivy finished applying its growth buff across the remaining crops, I carried the grass snake back inside the nursery. The moment I approached the tank, Phoebus splashed gracefully against the glass, swimming toward me with lively, animated eyes. Its mood consistently spiked whenever I was near, which had yielded a steady stream of golden fertilizer and rare candies from the system. Constant feeding with maintenance cubes had completely smoothed out its rough, irregular scales, giving its skin a healthy, milky white luster. Recognizing its own transformation in the glass reflection, Phoebus was finally ready to evolve. I used the power of the Viridian Forest's life force to check its emotional state, receiving a gentle, affectionate pulse in response. Smiling, I picked up the tank, brought it out to the plantation's water basin, and carefully transferred the fish into the open water. Sensing the sudden vastness of its surroundings, Phoebus panicked slightly, fearing it was being released back into the wild. I quickly reassured it, offering another maintenance cube, while promising that it was simply moving to a new home to guard the plantation and help with future irrigation. With its anxiety calmed, I retrieved the perfect-grade beautiful scale from my inventory. Aligning the scale over the damaged spot on its body, I triggered the evolution. A blinding white light erupted from Phoebus's body, and its small frame began to stretch and lengthen dramatically. Within seconds, it expanded to a graceful length of over 7 meters. As the radiance dissipated, a breathtaking melodic emerged before me, its sleek, milky white body gleaming in the twilight. Long, flowing pink whiskers draped gracefully from its head like willow fronds, while its fan-shaped tail radiated a vibrant, phosphorescent display of blue and crimson hues. Observing its new stats, I saw its potential had ascended to gold tier, with its strength jumping to nearly level 30 and its affection reaching 97%, marking a complete, unconditional trust in me. The jump from green to gold potential caught me completely by surprise. I knew Phoebus would undergo a massive improvement upon evolving, but reaching a legendary gold tier qualification exceeded all my expectations. As Melodic absorbed the afterglow of its transformation, it stared in disbelief at its own reflection in the water, its mind clearer than ever before. Every Phoebus dreams of becoming a Melodic, yet only an extraordinarily lucky few ever managed to leap over that dragon gate. To go from a neglected, dull-scaled fish to the most beautiful Pokémon in existence felt like a surreal miracle. System notifications chimed in my head, rewarding me with 20 bags of golden fertilizer, a medium-grade magic candy, and a rain dance skill move disc for bringing Melodic's happiness up to 98%. Overjoyed, Melodic let out a long, melodious cry and wrapped its long, muscular body around me, lifting me right off my feet. The sudden weightlessness and python-like constriction took my breath away, and before I could recover, it pulled me along for a playful lap around the small reservoir. Chuckling helplessly while holding onto its smooth torso, I asked it to put me down before I drowned. Sensing my discomfort, Melodic gently set me back on the bank. Since it was far too large for the indoor tank, I instructed it to guard the plantation and handle the routine watering. Evolution had made its mind far sharper, allowing it to understand my instructions instantly with a serious, eager nod. Snivy watched the entire scene unfold with wide, stunned eyes. Seeing such a dramatic leap from ugliness to radiant beauty filled the little grass snake with a sudden, restless longing for its own evolution. Sensing its eager mood, I patted its head and assured it that its time would come soon, though I secretly felt a touch of sadness at how fast my companions were growing out of their small, easily huggable forms. By July 12th, with only 2 days remaining before the baby cup, our farm routine had changed completely. Melodic learned the rain dance move from the system disc in a single flash, effortlessly summoning gentle rain clouds over small areas to keep the crops hydrated. With irrigation fully automated, Squirtle was officially retired from watering duties, though I briefly wished its stubby arms were long enough to help cut hay. With the plantation running smoothly, I turned my full attention to preparing Snivy for the tournament over the next 48 hours. Walking down the bluestone path, I fed Snivy a specialized energy cube crafted to accelerate move mastery. I noted that beyond its everyday clearing moves like Vine Whip and grassy terrain, it also possessed powerful skills like Leaf Tornado and Leaf Blade. Snivy shot me a suspicious look, wondering how I knew its entire skill set without ever seeing them used, but its proud spirit quickly took over, eager to show off its hard work from its wild days. Stepping into an open field, Snivy's tail glowed with a vibrant blue-green light as it launched a leaf tornado taller than a person, its spinning leaves cutting through the air with a loud whoosh. Impressed by the speed, I challenged it to layer a second leaf tornado directly inside the first one to double its wind speed and cutting power, effectively creating a compressed leaf storm. Surprised by the idea, Snivy concentrated deeply and channeled more energy, but the conflicting wind frequencies quickly drove the tornado out of control, sending it wilding toward a neighbor's paddy field. As Snivy panicked, I calmly called out to it, telling it not to lose its focus and guiding it to equalize the wind speeds of both whirlwinds. Hearing my steady voice, Snivy regained its composure and wrestled back control, steering the dense cyclone away from the crops and slamming it straight into a massive boulder. The leaves struck the stone with a metallic clatter, leaving deep gouges over 10 centimeters deep across the surface. Snivy let out a triumphant gasp, thrilled by the doubled destructive power. I nodded in deep approval, astonished that it had successfully executed a layered double-leaf tornado on its very first attempt. While Snivy continued practicing its dual-leaf tornadoes off to the side, I pulled a folding stool from my spatial storage ball and began browsing my phone. Instead of slacking off, I was searching for reliable local distributors to buy our upcoming crop harvest. I planned to save a portion of our yield, combining it with this season's peaches and oranges to craft specialized detoxification and stamina energy cubes for our nursery. I also reserved a batch to give to Grandpa Chin, intending to sell the rest to establish a steady income stream. I wasn't worried about finding buyers, as my parents had established strong commercial contacts across the region years ago. The most prominent distributor they worked with was originally called Laba Ya Fruit and Vegetable Supermarket, which had since expanded and rebranded into Da Shihua Food Company. Recognizing their growth over the past decade, I decided they would be the ideal partner for our produce. At the Da Shihua corporate headquarters in Wutong City, company president Chen Xiao was facing severe supply chain pressures following his firm's public listing. Their main commercial threat came from Want Company, the largest retail giant in the city. Want had previously attempted to squeeze out smaller distributors, but after Da Shihua went public, their aggressive tactics escalated dramatically. Want drastically lowered produce prices in their own hypermarkets while offering inflated prices to buy out local farms at the source. This coordinated squeeze left Da Shihua unable to stock its supermarket shelves or recover fresh inventory, threatening the company with rapid bankruptcy unless a stable, high-quality local supplier was secured immediately. As Chen Xiao sat in his office rubbing his temples over the crisis, his wife entered the room wearing a yellow floral dress and tried to comfort him. Seeing him stressed about their company's future and their high school-aged daughter's future Pokémon training expenses, she suggested downsizing back to a small retail shop if necessary, adding that their daughter could settle for a standard starter Pokémon instead of an expensive pseudo-legendary. Chen Xiao sighed, knowing that competing against a national giant required either massive capital or produce of such extraordinarily superior quality that it could win over consumers purely on taste and nutritional value. However, growing produce of that caliber required a specialized agricultural breeder, a rare profession in the region. Just as he considered giving up, his office desk phone rang with an urgent call from the purchasing department. Picking up the phone, Chen Xiao learned that a new supplier had just submitted product samples that looked exceptionally promising. However, his initial relief quickly faded when the purchasing manager revealed the origin of the offer. The supply came directly from the Lin family plantation in Wutong Town, which had recently been taken over by their young son following his parents' passing. Chen Xiao shared the news with his wife, expressing deep doubt that a teenager who had just taken over the farm could produce crops in sufficient volume or quality to save their enterprise. His wife responded in genuine surprise, amazed to learn that young Lin Feng was running the family plantation full-time instead of attending high school. By July 13th, I was surprised to find that several spicy tomatoes in the plantation had ripened to a deep, vibrant red overnight. Once these crops reach full maturity, they cease absorbing soil nutrients and remain fresh on the branch, which naturally extends their shelf life. However, prompt harvesting is still essential, as leaving mature produce on the vine weighs down the branches and prevents secondary yields from developing. Scanning a sample with my data site revealed them to be grade E spicy tomatoes packed with trace elements, delicious flavors, and physical enhancement benefits from long-term consumption. I picked a few mature fruits, handing one to Snivy and tossing another toward the reservoir, where Melodic caught it in midair and swallowed it whole with a graceful splash. Taking a large bite of one myself, I found the rich juice bursting with flavor. Produce of this nutritional caliber could easily serve as high-grade raw material for crafting energy cubes, making them exceptionally valuable for Pokémon breeding. Remembering my appointment with the buyer from Da Shuhua Food Company, I harvested the remaining ripe vegetables, packed them neatly inside a spatial storage ball, and walked down to the town entrance with Snivy by my side, thrilled at the prospect of earning my very first major payout. Once the farm's production was fully established, I planned to execute the second phase of my business strategy, which involved building my nursery's brand recognition by stamping our official logo on every item of produce we distributed. Standing at the town intersection, which served as the primary transit route to Wutong City, my phone rang with an incoming call from the procurement team. I answered quickly and confirmed I was waiting at the meeting spot. Shortly after, a white van pulled up alongside the road, and I stepped forward to knock on the driver's window. To my complete amazement, the driver who stepped out of the vehicle was none other than Uncle Chen, an old family friend I hadn't seen in nearly 8 years. Recognizing me as I stood at my full height of 1.78 m, Uncle Chen looked me up and down in genuine shock, warmly calling out my name. His wife, Aunt Huang, stepped out from the passenger side, beaming as she patted my head, and praised how handsome and clear-faced I had grown. They had both been close friends with my late parents, so reconnecting with them felt completely natural. Noticing Snivy standing beside me, Uncle Chen casually asked if it was my partner Pokémon. Snivy stepped forward with an obedient nod, surprising him with its refined and disciplined composure. Aunt Huang then asked why I had chosen to become a breeder rather than pursuing a traditional university degree. I explained that missing out on a starter Pokémon before the college entrance exams prevented me from taking the trainer track, so taking over my parents' plantation to preserve their legacy was the most fulfilling path for me. Eager to move on to business, I pulled out a fresh spicy tomato from my spatial storage ball and handed it to Uncle Chen. As an experienced produce merchant, his eyes widened the moment he examined the fruit's vivid color and flawless, pest-free skin, astonished to learn that I had cultivated it myself. I lightly deflected the credit onto Snivy, attributing the crop's extraordinary quality to its grassy terrain move. Taking a bite, Uncle Chen froze in sheer amazement as the rich, spicy flavor burst across his palate, instantly invigorating his senses. Realizing these weren't ordinary commercial crops, he urgently asked if the entire batch was of equal quality. I handed him the spatial storage ball containing our complete harvest of eggplants, tomatoes, and wild greens, leaving him staring at the inventory in overwhelming, undisguised joy. Overwhelmed by the sheer volume and quality of the produce, Uncle Chen quickly pulled out another spicy tomato and an eggplant from my storage ball, biting into the tomato before peeling back the eggplant's skin. The plump seeds and tender white flesh inside revealed a level of quality comparable to premium citrus fruits. When I asked if the vegetables met his standards, he enthusiastically assured me that these were practically treasure-grade crops, capable of improving human physical fitness with regular consumption. I asked about his offer, and he immediately pledged to buy the entire batch on the spot, offering 50 yuan per pound for the spicy tomatoes and matching rates for the rest of the yield. He recognized that produce beneficial to both humans and Pokémon would command immense demand, especially since high-tier agricultural crops were exceptionally rare across Wutong City. Beyond the specialized Miltank ranch in a nearby village, no other farm could consistently produce top-tier items like Moo Moo milk or E-grade crops. Realizing that even large retailers like Want Supermarket would eventually have to rely on my farm for premium produce, Uncle Chen eagerly asked if he could secure exclusive regional distribution rights for my entire output. Seeing me hesitate, he frantically offered to meet any terms or share structure I desired, driven by the intense market pressure his company faced. Aunt Huang shot me a pleading look, hoping I could help her anxious husband. I quickly clarified that my hesitation wasn't about money, but rather my concern about being unable to sell elsewhere if his company ever couldn't handle my future farm output. Relieved by my explanation, Uncle Chen agreed that giving his company first priority on all harvests would be more than enough. I then added a small request of my own, asking that every item of produce sold bear a custom sticker featuring the neighbor's nursery logo. Building a strong brand identity for our nursery would draw in more trainers and Pokémon, continuously unlocking system rewards for me over time. Uncle Chen gladly agreed to print and apply the labels himself. We quickly exchanged contact details on our messaging app, and he transferred the payment before Aunt Huang drove the van back toward Wutong City. Looking at my bank notification, my jaw dropped at the final deposit of 50,000 yuan. My late parents' savings had been steadily draining due to living expenses, making this 50,000 yuan payout for our very first harvest a massive financial turning point. Realizing that secondary and tertiary harvests were just days away from completion, I knew building true wealth was finally within reach. Overjoyed, I picked up Snivy and cheered that we were rich, attempting to give it a triumphant kiss on the cheek. However, two firm vine whips immediately pressed against my chin, holding me back as Snivy stared at me in complete disgust and confusion. On the walk back home, I gradually calmed down after being gagged by its vines. Snivy walked cautiously beside my panting form, worried that it might have used too much force, though my resilient constitution meant I felt no actual harm. Sensing its hesitation, Snivy nudged against my pant leg with a soft cry, making sure I was truly unhurt. I chuckled and patted its head, reassuring it that I was fine, while the little snake quietly concluded that human trainers required a surprising amount of comforting. As we walked along the cobblestone path, two young neighborhood kids caught our attention, fiercely playing out a pretend battle using stuffed toys of Rayquaza and Groudon. With summer break in full swing, the town felt far more lively and vibrant. Smiling at the scene, I turned to Snivy and declared that it was time to resume our training to secure first place in the Baby Cup. I then pulled out a mix of light green and red energy cubes I had crafted specifically to peak its combat performance for the upcoming tournament. By July 15th, Snivy's status reached peak condition, its level solidifying at level 19 after I fed it the final rare candy early in the morning. With its affection at 85 and enjoyment at 75, the little grass snake exuded intense anticipation for the day's matches, already sensing the imminent approach of its evolution. After a quick inspection of the plantation to ensure everything was secure, I carried Snivy in my arms and walked to the entrance of Wutong Town, where a small crowd had already gathered. The morning bus to Wutong City arrived, and just as I prepared to board, a frantic shout echoed down the road. I held the bus for a brief moment, allowing Chinshu to sprint up the steps completely out of breath. Seeing me on board, her eyes widened in surprise, and she quickly took the seat beside me. When I mentioned that I was heading into the city to compete in the Baby Cup, her cheerful smile instantly collapsed into dramatic despair. Having witnessed Snivy's terrifying mastery of grassy terrain and leaf tornado, she realized her dream of winning first place was entirely out of reach, leaving her sulking in comedic sadness for the remainder of the ride. Stepping off the bus near the entrance of Want Supermarket, Chinshu quickly bounced back with cheerful optimism, deciding that aiming for second place was a perfectly fine goal. The plaza outside the venue was swarming with excited teenagers and a wildly mismatched array of beginner Pokémon, ranging from Caterpie and Pidgey to Rattata and Psyduck. As I scanned the crowd, a familiar voice called out my name. It was my high school classmate Shu-kun, who stood out with his distinctive fringe hairstyle and overalls. He asked in genuine surprise why I was entering a beginner battle tournament instead of managing my family's farm, remembering my top-tier academic record alongside my missed trainer exam. I gave a casual smile and explained that the tournament rewards were simply too good to pass up. Looking down at the orange chick beside him, I noted that his Torchic was already sitting at level 17 with impressive fire-type moves, prompting me to remark that it looked remarkably close to evolving. Shukun puffed out his chest with pride before letting out a dramatic sigh, complaining that the supermarket owner's son had entered the tournament with a peak-tier Lapras, effectively locking down first place for himself. While a Lapras possessed massive base stats that dominated beginner tournaments, my Snivy had spent the last few days consuming specialized special attack and health-enhancing energy cubes made from special scale and life berries. Having mastered the double-leaf tornado and even experimented with a triple-layered variant, Snivy had worked far too hard for us to settle for anything less than absolute victory. Our brief high school nostalgia quickly faded into quiet anticipation as the crowd milled about the plaza. Nearby, Chinshu found herself locked in an unpleasant exchange with a boy whose flashy dyed yellow hair immediately gave off a terrible impression. Sensing her distress, I adjusted Snivy in my arms and strode directly over to investigate. The boy, Zhang Xiaoming, was smugly flicking his yellow bangs, insisting that her Squirtle had no chance against his Bulbasaur due to elemental-type disadvantages. Seeing her grow flustered, he tried to pressure her into a coercive bet, claiming she should become his girlfriend if she lost the matchup. Seeing her trapped in defensive anger, I stepped forward, placed a reassuring hand on top of Chinshu's head, and coldly cut him off, telling him to take his public horniness elsewhere. Recognizing her childhood protector, Chinshu looked at me with instant relief. I ignored the boy's flustered demands to know who I was, turning directly to Chinshu to advise her to block his contact information and ignore him entirely. As Zhang Xiaoming boiled with rage, tournament officials and city law enforcement arrived to maintain order, forcing him to swallow his anger in silence. Shortly after, Chi Hung, the general manager of Want Want Supermarket, took the stage alongside Wutong City television representatives to open the event. As he delivered an excessively long speech about supporting youth trainers, Snivy let out a soft sigh of boredom. I quietly explained to her that the entire tournament was essentially a lavishly staged PR event designed by a wealthy father to launch his son's trainer career on live television. While the grand setup showcased the power of corporate connections, I felt no envy, well aware that my own backing through the system far surpassed anything money could buy. After 10 minutes of introductory remarks, the crowd was directed onto 3 parked shuttle buses bound for the Wutong City Sports Arena. Glancing around the 42-seat vehicle, I estimated the total participant count at around 126 competitors. During the short drive, I opened a text message from Uncle Chen, who excitedly reported that our first batch of farm crops had sold out completely and asked when the next yield would be ready. I messaged back that our continuous produce would be harvestable in 4 to 5 days, secretly planning to start planting large summer watermelons next to maximize profits with minimal repetitive labor. The bus pulled up to the main arena with a hiss of its air brakes, and I stepped out with Snivy rested securely in my arms. Seeing rows of press reporters equipped with heavy camera gear, I recognized a massive marketing opportunity. Securing first place wouldn't just mean winning the tournament. It would allow me to feature Snivy holding our custom energy cubes on live television, delivering an unforgettable advertisement that would drive endless trainers and system rewards straight to our neighborhood nursery. Inside the Wutong Arena, the commentator stood atop a levitating Aegis lash, adjusting his suit and tie as his voice echoed over the crowd. He welcomed everyone to the inaugural Wutong City Baby Cup competition, proudly sponsored by the Want department store, before launching into a lengthy speech about the foundational importance of Pokémon battles for novice trainers. I tuned out his rehearsed rhetoric entirely, keeping my focus on the tournament structure. The massive circular field had been divided into a 3x3 grid, with white lime lines forming 9 separate arenas, allowing multiple preliminary matches to run simultaneously. With 124 contestants competing in 62 opening matches across the 9 grounds, the group stage moved at a rapid pace. I held my ticket, showing I was assigned to the 4th match on Court 9. Chinshu was assigned to Court 8 nearby, allowing me to easily observe her area through the inner fence. The yellow-haired boy, Zhang Xiaoming, was also in Court 8, and attempted to hover near her again. But Chinshu promptly reported his behavior to a nearby law enforcement officer, who issued a stern warning that sent him slinking away. Satisfied that she could handle herself, I turned my attention back to the field as the commentator finally finished his opening remarks and called the first round of competitors to their positions. Given that high school graduation had passed over a month prior, most of the city's top graduate trainers had already embarked on their journeys toward distant gym challenges. The remaining talent pool consisted mostly of local novices, making this event a true beginner tournament. I scanned Court 9 to assess our immediate competition, watching a match between a Caterpie and a Weedle. To verify their true strength, I activated my sight to inspect the Caterpie, revealing it to be a plain white-tier insect sitting at level 7 with basic moves like string shot and tackle. The opposing Weedle was only level 6. Snivy sighed in annoyance at the weak opposition, worried her attacks might inflict severe harm, but I softly reassured her that stronger opponents would eventually surface. Looking across the other courts, I noticed a clear divide in combat quality. Matches in the middle courts featured Pokémon around levels 11 and 12, such as Nidoran and Bulbasaur. Meanwhile, Court 3 hosted my classmate Shu Kun, who easily used his level 17 Torchic to knock out an opposing Pidgey with a single Ember. The aerial commentator rushed over to Court 3 to provide enthusiastic play-by-play coverage for the crowd, briefly highlighting the Fire-type victory before shifting his gaze back down to Court 9, where the Caterpie and Weedle had managed to entangle each other in a hopeless knot of silk threads. After a painful minute of static struggle, the Weedle trainer ordered a poison sting to sever the webbing and claim a slow victory, leaving the spectating crowd completely speechless. The group stage dragged on through its second and third waves on our court. The second match saw a level 9 Spearow defeat a level 10 Rattata, while the third match featured a level 13 Pichu that evolved into Pikachu mid-battle to defeat a level 11 Greamer. Just as Snivy and I grew thoroughly bored, Court 7 finally drew my full attention. A short, chubby boy carrying a bag of potato chips stepped onto the arena with a completely casual demeanor to face a female trainer wielding a massive level 15 Onix. Sensing a real highlight, the commentator flew his Aegislash directly over Court 7, loudly hyping the impressive scale and polished stone skin of the giant Onix. His voice rose to a dramatic shout as the chubby boy tossed his Pokeball, revealing a rare Lapras onto the field. The matchup on Court 7 between Onix and Lapras quickly drew the entire arena's attention, leaving the spectating crowd buzzing with excitement. Watching the display, I could not help but smile at the commentary team's obvious theatrical strategy, deliberately hyping the size of Onix just to make the Lapras look remarkably dominant in victory. Snivy's eyes lit up as she observed the majestic water type, recognizing a truly formidable contender for the first time all day. I gently stroked her head and promised that our turn to face them would come soon enough. Using my sight to inspect the Lapras, I confirmed it possessed a purple tier qualification and sat at level 19 with powerful ice and water moves. However, the system profile revealed that its owner had been artificially suppressing its energy to prevent it from evolving past the beginner stage before the tournament. Prolonged energy suppression causes painful physical swelling in a Pokémon and can even permanently damage its growth potential, a reckless tactic that I would never subject my own partners to. When Court 7's match began, the short boy casually ordered a water gun. A massive, high-pressure torrent erupted from Lapras's jaws, trapping the giant Onix within the tight boundaries of the arena. Desperate to defend itself, the Onix, coiling in pain, managed to launch a rock slide, but Lapras brushed off the falling boulders and amplified its water stream until the giant rock snake collapsed into a faint. The crowd burst into thunderous applause at the one-hit knockout, while the commentator enthusiastically declared the boy an unsung prodigy. Snivy's fighting spirit burned even brighter as she watched, eager for a genuine challenge, so I reminded her never to hold back her own energy if she felt the urge to evolve during our upcoming matches. As the fourth wave of preliminary matches was called, I walked over to Court 9 alongside my opponent, a boy with a crew cut and an arrogant posture. Seeing me carry Snivy in my arms, he smugly lectured me about spoiling my Pokémon, claiming that pampering soft-hearted companions prevents them from becoming true combatants. He released a level 15 Sandshrew, proudly bragging that he had built its resilience by forcing it to swim in rivers and run through heavy rain to conquer its weakness to water. Scanning his Sandshrew, I noted that its scales were already loosening and damaged from excessive water exposure, leaving me completely speechless at his misguided, painful training methods. Despite his Sandshrew being the highest level opponent in Group 9, I knew it would barely prove to be a warm-up for Snivy. Commentator Li Bing breathed a sigh of relief as his Aegislash hovered gracefully above the arena floor. The corporate money he received for hyping this tournament was proving remarkably difficult to earn, forcing him to overpraise the Lapras simply because he could hardly praise its owner for eating potato chips during combat. Facing financial pressure himself, he tolerated the ridiculous job while floating between the courts, hoping to spot a truly capable novice among the remaining group stage matches. Moving toward Court 8, he noticed a classic starter matchup between Chinshu's Squirtle and Zhang Xiaoming's Bulbasaur. Frustrated from his earlier police reprimand, Zhang Xiaoming boasted fiercely that her water type had no chance against his plant. Remembering my advice to ignore him entirely, Chinshu offered no verbal response, maintaining a confident smile. As the referee gave the signal, she immediately ordered a water gun. Trained rigorously by Snivy during our plantation irrigation sessions, Squirtle unleashed a lightning-fast, high-pressure jet that struck Bulbasaur before it could even attempt to dodge, leaving the grass type crying out in sheer pain. Overjoyed by the result, Chinshu ordered a second rapid burst, knocking Bulbasaur off balance completely. Watching from above, Li Bing was deeply impressed by the incredible speed and precision of Squirtle's water attacks, quietly realizing that such refined skill went far beyond the typical capabilities of a beginner trainer. Meanwhile, back on Court 9, my opponent with the buzz cut ordered his Sandshrew to perform a continuous slash combo. Throughout our match, he had ordered roll, poison sting, and slash in rapid succession, yet Snivy gracefully sidestepped every projectile and blocked every claw strike with Leaf Blade, using his Sandshrew as a practical training target. Communicating silently through my Viridian life force, I asked Snivy if she had adjusted to the opponent's rhythm, and she gave an eager nod. I casually called for a Vine Whip attack just as Sandshrew leaped high into the air with glowing claws. In a split second, two vibrant green whips lashed out like lightning, striking Sandshrew with immense force and hurling it over 10 meters across the field. Thanks to Snivy's maxed speed and extensive daily farm work, her whip speed was practically imperceptible to the naked eye. The boy with the buzz cut stood frozen in utter shock as his highly durable Sandshrew struggled to stand after a single hit, incredulously asking how my Snivy could possess such overwhelming power. I calmly advised him that if he had any questions regarding her strength, he should visit the neighbor's nursery in Wutong Town to discover the secret for himself. Snivy glanced up at me with puzzled amber eyes, unaware that I was already using her victory to promote our business, while my opponent nodded in deep, earnest gratitude before leading his Sandshrew away. Observing the finish from above, Li Bing's eyes widened in genuine astonishment. As a gym-level trainer, he immediately recognized that the raw speed and power behind Snivy's whip strike were extraordinary for an unevolved starter, reflecting absolute mutual trust between trainer and Pokémon. Glancing over at the pampered Lapras trainer sitting comfortably in the player area, Li Bing realized that this rigged tournament, designed behind the scenes by Want Supermarket to guarantee their son a staged victory, was now facing a massive threat. Driven by a quiet surge of excitement, he decided to manipulate the upcoming match brackets, setting up an unavoidable, direct showdown between my Snivy and their peak-tier Lapras. Following the conclusion of the first round, the second round began after a brief 5-minute break. For Snivy, who had barely expended any energy in her opening fight, the fast turnaround made no difference. My second round opponent was the Spearow trainer, whose face instantly fell upon realizing he had been paired against us. The rest of the Group 9 contestants looked equally dejected, having already witnessed Snivy's overwhelming strength. From the start, the Spearow tried to fly and dodge, but the enclosed indoor arena left it with nowhere to hide, and Snivy quickly brought it down with a swift Vine Whip strike. The third round pitted us against a level 13 Pikachu. While I appreciated the species, it lacked the miraculous resilience of legendary companions, and Snivy bound it tightly before casually tossing it out of bounds. With that victory, the morning group stage came to an end, leaving 9 contestants to advance. The organizers provided a free lunch alongside a 2-hour break. Chinchu hurried over in high spirits to announce that she had also won her group. Her Squirtle had benefited from favorable elemental matchups and a well-trained water gun, though the quick victories inspired her to daydream about competing on the grand stage of the Pokémon World Championship. I simply smiled at her enthusiasm, appreciating her dedication even as she fantasized about the future. When the afternoon session began, the atmosphere felt much more relaxed with only 9 trainers remaining. The officials planned to run 4 matches simultaneously, granting one randomly selected contestant a bye directly into the top 5. 10 minutes before start time, supermarket owner Chi Hung reviewed the advancing roster at Court 7. Though he lacked deep battle expertise, he suspected I was hiding Snivy's true potential to claim the top prize. Intending to eliminate any threats to his son's Lapras, he summoned commentator Li Bing and altered the schedule, pairing me against Shu Kun so his fire-type Torchic could force Snivy to reveal her full strength. 5 minutes before the matches commenced, the 9 remaining trainers gathered for the final draw announcement. Shu Kun walked over with his Torchic, genuinely surprised to find himself paired against me. Remembering that I hadn't even taken a starter during high school, he wondered how I had raised a competitive Pokémon so quickly. As we walked toward our designated court, he offered a sympathetic sigh, warning me with a confident smile that my luck had run out and promising to go easy on my grass-type companion. I chose not to offer any lengthy explanations in response to Shu Kun's warning, knowing that real battle results speak far louder than words ever could. Right beside us, Chinchu broke into joyous laughter upon looking at her paper, having drawn the single bye that sent her straight into the top 5. Accepting her good fortune with a grin, I watched as commentator Li Bing's voice echoed through his microphone across the stadium, calling all remaining contestants to move toward their assigned battlegrounds. I walked over to the combined courts with Snivy resting in my arms, while Shu Kun followed alongside his Torchic. Although he had casually joked about going easy on me earlier, the serious expression on his face revealed that he was treating our match with utmost gravity. Having attended school together, he knew my top academic performance and simulated battle record, recognizing that my Snivy was anything but a pushover. As the referee announced the start of the battle, Shukun immediately ordered his Torchic to launch a quick attack combined with Ember. The Torchic sprinted across the arena floor at incredible speed on its short legs, spewing a dense spray of sparks along its path. Seeing this refined tactic, I realized Shukun had hidden his Pokemon's true capability during the group stage. Confronted with a wall of fiery embers, I instructed Snivy to dodge the initial wave and charge directly forward using Leaf Blade. Because Torchic relied on forward momentum to project its embers safely sideways, trying to retreat or dodge laterally would only force Snivy into the expanding field of fire, whereas closing the distance head-on left the fire type unable to spray embers directly into its own path. Snivy instantly grasped the strategy, charging straight through the gap as Torchic's fire scattered harmlessly. Leaping into the air, Snivy gracefully spun and brought her glowing, clover-shaped tail down on her opponent with immense force. The powerful impact sent Torchic tumbling across the dirt floor while Snivy landed smoothly, suffering only minor recoil. Without granting our opponent a moment to recover, I called for Vine Whip. 2 vibrant green vines erupted from Snivy's back, shooting forward to seize the struggling Torchic. Shukun shouted desperately for his partner to stand, but before the fire type could regain its footing, Snivy's vines wrapped firmly around its legs, hoisting it into the air and slamming it onto the ground. Seeing the Torchic immobilized and unable to fight back, Li Bing promptly declared us the victors, wisely stopping the match before any severe harm occurred. I praised Snivy as she returned to my side, and she gave a proud, subtle smirk in return. Shukun recalled his beaten Torchic and walked over with a helpless smile, admitting that my strategic mind remained as sharp as ever. I shrugged off the compliment and warmly invited him to visit my neighbor's nursery in Wutung Town, reminding him that fellow students receive a 20% discount. As he agreed to keep the address in mind and headed off to care for his Pokémon, I noticed supermarket owner Chi Heng watching us from the stands. His expression had darkened significantly after watching Snivy effortlessly defeat a fire-type counter, clearly realizing that my presence threatened his entire stage tournament and that he would need to deal with me directly. As the quarterfinals wrapped up, leaving only 5 players in the arena, Want supermarket owner Chi Heng approached me with a practiced smile and led me to a quiet corner of the stands. He pulled out a bank card containing 500,000 yuan, offering it as a bribe for Snivy to throw the match by faking an instant knockout against his son's Lapras. Looking at him with a frown, I immediately refused his offer and turned away, refusing to fix a match for a pittance. Left behind in frustration, Chi Heng called his son, ordering him to stop suppressing Lapras's energy and unleash its full power in the upcoming finals to secure the win. Back in the player area, Snivy fumed with indignation, deeply offended that someone had doubted her ability to beat the Lapras. I gently patted her head, explaining that their panic only proved how much they feared our strength. Though Snivy's anger cooled slightly, her competitive spirit burned brighter than ever. When the semifinals began, I faced a Spearow trainer and won effortlessly, while Qin Shu outrageously drew another bye straight into the final rankings. Seeing her luck, I glanced up at Li Bing floating in the sky, wondering if the organizers were manipulating the match schedule. By 4 in the afternoon, the final round commenced, with the championship title on the line. 3 minutes before our match, the chubby boy holding Lapras's Pokeball approached me. He casually mentioned that his father considered me a major threat, which was why Lapras had been forced to suppress its energy to boost its perceived potential. Offering me a chip from his bag, which I politely declined, he confessed that he hated making his Lapras suffer and felt completely unsuited for the grueling physical demands of being a real trainer. Standing under 5 feet 9 inches and weighing nearly 200 pounds, he admitted that traveling in gym battles held no appeal for him. Recognizing his honesty, my initial dislike vanished, and I agreed that while a trainer's conditioning could be built over time, it was a lifestyle that required genuine passion. With both Snivy and Lapras stepping onto the main stage for the final clash, the surrounding crowd erupted into passionate cheering. Spectators eagerly debated the outcome, highlighting how Lapras had relied solely on its overwhelming water gun, while Snivy had swept through every opponent using only Vine Whip and Leaf Blade. While some favored the raw base stats of the water-type dragon, despite the elemental disadvantage, many in the audience cheered for Snivy's elegant, precise combat style. Facing a fully unleashed Lapras, Snivy and I stood ready to claim absolute victory.